We will have a presentation by Manlio Michieletto from Cairo, but from what I hear from our intelligence, our speaker studied in Italy, and Cairo is the place where he resides today. I am sure that he will introduce the topic of his presentation himself, but I believe we can all see that it will be focused on this unusual trend, tropical modernism. This, of course, concerns Africa. Please join us on stage.
So let me first acknowledge the organization of this conference. It's a pleasure for me to be here today presenting my research titled Constructing the Tropical Modernism, Concrete and Steel for the Project of a New Capital City, Kinshasa. It has been glad to see friends from Italy. I teach in Africa, it's true. It has been a long journey in Africa, it's still ongoing. But as you said, I study in Italy. And here I try to summarize this journey and this sort of peregrination through the African continent that started in Burkina Faso. Then I moved to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the blue spot that you see in the middle of Africa. Then I moved to Rwanda, and currently I'm working in Egypt at the German University in Cairo. Kinshasa, that is also the main topic of this presentation, is the orange dot that you see almost on the western side of Congo. I spent there more than 6 years, so sorry to depict a short, brief frame about autobiographical frame, just to introduce and to become familiar with maybe an environment that is not well known in our context. So, for example, here I was working as a professor at the Institut Supérieur d'Architecture et Urbanisme de Kinshasa. So 6 years of teaching, and I had also the chance to teach and to work in different institutions in the country. And at a certain moment, I've discovered these gems, hidden gems, from the tropical modernism, the so-called tropical modernism. In this case, is an institute in Banzangungu by Eugène Palombo. If you have went through my paper that has been published that we have received this morning during the registration, you have noticed that to explain, to describe the events related to the tropical modernism in Kinshasa that trigger the shaping of the city, of a new capital city, I just selected 2 architects. There is a long list of local, so not only expats, so from Europe mostly, architects, urban planners, that they work in between the 2 wars, and also after the independence to shape a new capital, Kinshasa. In this case, for example, you see the auditorium in Banzangungu, and you find yourself teaching to the students in this magnificent space built using beton. I love beton too, by the way. But also learning from the space. And this is, for me, in an educational building, something that is so exciting, so interesting. And so when I was seeing before the new libraries, I was quite concerned about what we are building, frankly. nowadays. And I taught also to the Politechniki in Kinshasa, and this is the building that is hosting the faculties of civil engineering and architecture. Is known because Richard Neutra at a certain moment visited Congo and expressly wanted to visit this campus. And this building that Neutra criticized for its monumentality, by the way, is complying with the rules and the principles of the tropical modernism. This is something that maybe we will become more familiar later during the presentation. By the way, I start with a very short, maybe I don't know if I'm taking too much time, but a sort of historical background on the traditional way of building, what we call vernacular architecture, architecture without architects, Rudowski. But for example, me that I'm passionate in postcards, on one side of the postcard you see a traditional construction, a traditional hut in Kasai, that is in the middle of Congo. But if you turn, the postcard is written "L'Afrique disparaît," quite provocative, because it has been printed out by the colonizer. So it's not the African architecture that is moving away, that is literally cleaned up from its ground. By the way, so I moved then to the 1915 with the first construction or buildings using durable materials. So they also introduce a new system for them. And you see buildings lifted up on pilotis to protect, to ventilate, so to get a good hygrometry inside the building. And then we moved to the 20s. Kinshasa was called Leopoldville, so the city of Leopold. Just to tell you, Leopold, the Belgian emperor, decided that Congo was his own private property, was not even classified as a state, was a private property. Suddenly, the need of transforming an outpost, a sort of military compound, in a real city, trigger the use of new materials, or the most modern materials that on that period of time were available. For example, this is the first multi-stories building built with cast iron. We know the history of cast iron from another continent, on the other side of the Atlantic Sea. But in this case, this building, the Hotel ABC, was built in a sort of Art Deco, because, by the way, it has been influenced by the Belgian architectural trend of that period. But not only. So you see the construction in cast iron, very interesting. The highest building for 1 decade built in the sub-Saharan Africa. But also visiting with the students Banzangungu, where I taught for a short period of time, the first bungalow, so cottages that have been used by the Belgians, were imported from UK. UK was the main site for precasted, prefabricated bungalows that were shipped normally to India. So, and to all the other colonies. And the Belgian, if you know a bit of, geographically, the importance, but also the strength of Belgium compared to the UK at the beginning of the 20th century, it was relying on the innovation technology coming from UK. And if you go to visit these bungalows, part of them are abandoned or squatted. is still written, made in UK, all these cast iron profiles. I moved to the construction of a city, the architecture also of a city, of Kinshasa. So to 1 year before the independence, 1959. This is a screenshot of the city of Kinshasa, with in the middle, on the northern part, facing the river Congo. Let me call it the historical core of Leopoldville and Kinshasa, with a monumental boulevard. And then you see on the southern part all these satellites, all these Siedlungen, let me say, just to pick from someone that I know very well, that I studied a lot. And all these Siedlungen or satellite settlements are the settlement of the locals, okay, the local people. How to explain what is going on, by the way, because we start from a very primitive outpost, a sort of military compound. We move then to a Leopoldville, a sort of capital city, and then to Kinshasa in 1960, before the independence. I refer in this case to urban forms, les formes urbaines, Panerai, and this homage à Ernest May, to development of the urban block. And I flip it, something that I was used to show to my students. How a planned city, Kinshasa, for 400,000 people, now is hosting the same city, almost 20 million people, with the same infrastructures. The same infrastructures. So from a planned city, 1940, if you take and if you visit now on the ground the situation and you assess what is going on, we have to revert the sequence of this homage. I call it homage à Kinshasa. So as it was the year of the independence, 1960, for most of the African countries, by the way. Ghana has been the first one, and then all the others. A tropical city plan, the number of buildings, the density of the city everything was planned. This is the same boulevard, 2024, so nowadays, and you see that the architecture that is shaping the city has changed. The references have changed, but also the infrastructure that were part of the initial project of Kinshasa are still there, and they have to support and to bear the load of 20 million people. And then you spot also this, we call it Dubai architecture. That has nothing to do, by the way, with Dubai. This is also very interesting and fun. By the way, to import an architecture that has nothing to do from even the place where it's been developed. So the glazed curtain wall buildings, that they need the use of machineries to function. This is one of the Siedlungen that I showed you before, that if you know Leistikov and these paintings that he depicted for Braunheim in Frankfurt am Main are very similar. The use of colors and the orientation, so all these principles coming from the modern movement, rationalism. And now I show you the same settlement that has been occupied totally, so the density multiplied by 10, even more. So you may say, but this is a natural process, because we know that the city built itself over time, so it's a sort of natural process, but the problem of Kinshasa is that this process has never been regulated. Up to now, the only master plan that we have is 1975, during the Mobutu era. Up to now, 2024, Kinshasa is building itself, so it's growing without any master plan, without any guideline. And this is, for me, coming, as you said, well, I studied in Italy, but coming from Venice, a certain kind of school and mindset. It has been a shock at the very beginning, how I can teach to my student to dealing with this organism, because literally it's an organism that is growing continuously, but it's not growing, expanding itself. It's growing, eating itself. I don't know how to say, frankly. By the way, we go back to the steel and concrete. La Compagnie Congolaise de Construction started also to prefabricate, because now, if you are, let me say, a bit provocative definition, owning an African state, and you want to modernize this state, there is a typo, it's on the 40s, it's not on the 1914, of course. If you want to modernize Kinshasa, you have to apply, to introduce in the constructive system, the prefabrication is easy. You can produce it on site. And you see how the Belgians have been able to literally transform the face, the physical face of Kinshasa. So from the ABC, cast iron Giza, cast iron building, they moved to steel and concrete. And this is, Forescom has been for decades the highest building in the sub-Saharan countries. So a sort of iconic building when you wanted to represent the architectural developments in Africa. What is interesting is that the skyscraper Forescom is an adaptive architectural example. It's not just I use concrete because I want to become modern. I use concrete, but contextualizing concrete. And this is what we have to learn from this experience, from this chapter, architectural chapter of the modern movement. This is the most exciting part, but also the most difficult to teach, to transfer. You can imagine, this is maybe, I will talk about it later. This is the completion, when they complete the construction of the Forescom building. Also, it's not only steel and beton, le béton brut, or joli, maybe, I don't know. But there is also l'Eternit, asbestos. I lived for 6 years in many houses where I've been, also schools. The roof was asbestos, Eternit roof. So, quite dangerous, just say quite, no, extremely dangerous. By the way, it was also a way for the Belgians to conquer the market in Africa. I dropped there the fabrication, so the production of asbestos, that was easy to be and economic. It was affordable. But they didn't know the side effects of using asbestos. At the end, we go back always to Le Corbusier, because if we want to understand the introduction of steel and concrete in the tropical modernism, we have also to remember the grandfather of the tropical modernism. That launch, that throw the stone on the lake, use this metaphor. So la maison locative, Ponsic, in Algiers, and Claude Lorenz, that in Kinshasa is working for Sabena, Bruxelles Airline, it's called nowadays, Sabena, to build the housing for the pilots. Claude Lorenz, through his father, he became a friend of Le Corbusier. And so when he has been called to design the housing for pilots of planes, the first idea is the machine for living in. But not only, there is also a fascination of providing a different way of living in this kind of environment, of context. This is one of the panels that Claude Lorentz designed, a very interesting perspective view of these 3 towers. They built only 2 at the end. Steel and concrete to shape, to literally shape, to give, to assign a form to a tropical city. Is a sequence of duplex, one over another, like Le Corbusier, the same. This is something that I was usually showing to my students, how a piece, so the ending volumes of l'unité d'habitation became suddenly a new way of living in Kinshasa. But so it's the same? No, because even the modern movement that has been always labeled as anti-historical, anti-context, has been able to contextualize itself, so to become part of the environment. And so Claude Lorentz studied first the environment, the climate, which is the best orientation if we want to live in a duplex in Kinshasa, oriented north, and then you have to protect as much as possible from the sun hitting the most exposed elevations. And so Brie-Soleil, La Maison Locative, Ponsic, Le Corbusier, is always a process of referring to something that already existed. We don't invent in architecture. We just upgrade something that already existed or was existing. This is a picture that I took from one of the apartments that I lived in during the 6 years. It's also a project designed by Claude Lorentz, Vangelo. This is another story. But this is the picture overlooking east side. So if you are on the north side, the Brie-Soleil are oriented horizontally. But when you have elevations on the east or on the west, the Brie-Soleil are becoming vertical. In this case, are turnable. So aluminium, after 60 years, perfect in terms of maintenance and conditions. And this is a picture of today, not 54, it's also a typo, I'm very sorry. À l'Arrêt Mandela in Kinshasa, you see that the boulevard has become a sort of highway, a physical barrier, by the way, to the well-being of the city, let me say, tangible and intangible. And by the way, the 2 towers after 60 years are still standing, violated, let me use this definition, but are still, for me, and also for the student, case studies, valuable case studies in understanding the heritage. The heritage is not just something that has to be pushed backward 2,000 years ago. The heritage is also a recent heritage. The problem is how you look at this heritage. For example, my students, the first time that I show the drawings of Lorentz, they were shocked. They didn't even know that the 2 towers were in Kinshasa. So also, you need to train your eyes on the way you look at architecture. And the intervention of my colleague before was saying that we don't need libraries. In the libraries, normally, we store the best books, the good practices. The city, now, it came up to my mind that also the city is a library, is an open-air library, where we store the best And we have to also store the new best books or the best new architectural buildings. But also we have permanencies. So these element of the city, fragment of the city that has to be preserved. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.